Hello everyone, my name is Wes Joseph and this is episode number 19 of the East Auckland Property Show. Again, I'm at the offices of Duncan Law and I'm joined by the director of the firm, Kristine. Thanks, Kristine. Last two episodes we covered the different types of titles that we have in New Zealand, and on the last episode we talked about cross leases, so I'm going to link all those videos below if you've missed those videos. Today we're going to discuss unit titles or strata. So this is another level of sharing a property. Exactly. So what's specific about unit titles?
So unit titles are a mechanism or a legal way of owning property with other people. Okay, so unfortunately, there isn't just enough land for us all to have, a standalone property. So over the years, we've developed a way to appreciate how we might own with other people. So a unit title, in a really simple way of understanding it, is a defined space, like a box. Okay, so if you imagine, not that I'm trying to say apartments are boxes, but just bear with me, guys. So you own your defined space.
It's a 3D space, right?
It is. So you've got your apartment, your box, so that's your space. And your ownership, depending on how it's drafted, is often to the midline of the wall. So if you can understand, because we have to map out exactly where your ownership runs to. But then we've got these shared spaces. So you think about driveways, lobbies, elevators, staircases, everything like that, because they're these services that need to support the rest of the building and ensure you can access your defined space. So you own those shared spaces with all your neighbours, okay? And the thing is about sharing is we need rules around how we do that. Because I have to say, human beings, we're not, and I know what my kids are like, we're not particularly good at sharing unless we've got some quite specific rules. So the whole concept of the Unit Titles Act, which is our legislation which guides how we have these spaces, is all about regulating sharing. Okay, so, and it covers a lot of things, because there's a lot of things you care about, not only how your neighbours might treat you in the hallway, but also who pays for the hallway. You know what I mean? If the carpet gets ripped. Okay, so the way it works is all of the owners in the building are members of what we call the body corporate. You probably hear that term quite a bit, and I know it's a bit confusing because I get a lot of calls from my clients saying, can I get hold of the body corp? Well, to be honest, if you own a unit in the development, you're actually already a member of. But the problem is we get confused because we really see the body corporate committees as being the body corp or the chairman, not realising that we're already part of it. Okay, so keep in mind you're always part of the body corp, but there may be a committee representing your interests. Okay, so this collection of owners, they then have rules about how they look after the building and particularly how they fund it, which is quite important. Okay, and there's a lot of legislation around that, and then the developments themselves also have their rules. So if I was looking at a unit title for you, the first thing I want to check for you guys is that the defined space is actually what is there physically. And you kind of look at me and go, well, didn't we say it was a box? You know what I mean? But
what do you mean?
No, exactly. Well, it is possible in some defined spaces to make them bigger. Okay. And we have a habit of, of liking to renovate. I think we have to acknowledge that. It's possible with some unit titles that maybe a townhouse or something like that, that you extend it. Suddenly, guys, you've been a bit cheeky and you've made your defined space bigger, but also what you've done as a consequence, you've actually breached the whole title plan, because the whole thing may be 200 units all mapped out these little boxes. If you've suddenly made your box bigger, it ruins everybody's titles and makes a big problem. Okay, so the first thing we're doing is checking that someone else hasn't done that on the property you're looking at. So is the defined space correct? Okay, a lot of the times it is. Okay, so it's only maybe I get 1 or 2 a year where someone's done something silly like that. Okay, moving on, we really start.
So it affects everyone else's title.
Yeah, because the entire unit plan is wrong. So you think, gosh, and I had one recently, and the client wanted to take it on and fix it. And I had to explain to them that the survey cost to resurvey 200 units in a development, they don't have the money sitting there, and their bank certainly wasn't happy about it as well. So rule of thumb is never take on someone else's problems, especially a unit title problem. Be really, really careful. But once we've actually determined that the defined space is okay, we start to really look at the operation of the unit, okay? Your agent will probably give you some documents, okay?
Yeah.
So a lot of it's what we call pre-contract disclosure,
Yeah.
which is a very simple statement about what the unit is, how much you're paying per year and what we call levies, okay?
Yeah.
So that's your contribution towards the running of the building and maybe
That's the body
maintenance.
corporate fee.
Yeah.
No.
But there also might be some information about whether there's been any claims against the building or in respect to the building for weather tightness. So has it been leaky? It's quite important that we see that statement. Having said that, for me, I want to know everything about a property. So I always like to see more information. Okay, always check with the cost guys because sometimes it can fall to you as a purchaser. But I want to see copies of minutes, the financials. I want to see the limb even, just to make sure there haven't been issues in the building. Because sometimes some hidden stuff can be in those financial documents, like people may be talking about repairs. Because I don't know if you know this, a lot of people don't know that it's a legal obligation for these buildings, these developments, to have what we call a long-term maintenance plan. Developments can actually contract out and resolve not to actually hold any money for the plan. I know, isn't it amazing? So they plan to get it fixed, but they're not actually holding any cash to do it.
No budget.
No budget. So they're not actually holding what we call a long-term maintenance fund. So the thoughts are there, but there's no cash to give effect. The problem for you as a purchaser, you might buy and you can see this plan that they want to, change the balustrades next year, but there's no money to do it. So what's going to happen?
How are they going to fund it?
They're going to come to you, and which can be pretty crummy if you've only just bought the unit and just funded it. So these things we need to check for you. And as I always say, you just cannot take on anyone else's problems. So you can see there's quite a bit going on with unit titles, and it is really important that you have a good understanding of the title itself, the documents that are supplied by the agent, the rules of the body corp, but also all the underlying management of the unit, because it may really affect you and it may affect your wallet long term.
Yeah, and we're going to see a lot more unit titles because we have a lot more developments in the pipeline, and with increasing the density,
the
building density, we're going to see a lot more.
But also, as we're finding, we don't usually undertake subdivisions with cross leases anymore, so we're starting to see unit titles on what we see the smaller developments. So again, it is really important to understand what you're buying into. There are a few changes coming through in our laws which might help us to regulate the different sizes of developments, but at this stage they haven't come through, so we might have to have another catch up about those.
Awesome. Okay, so that was all for today. Next time we're going to discuss first home buyers and what it's like to buy your first property, and what are the most common mistakes that from a legal perspective Kristine sees on a daily basis. So anything else that you would like to add?
Sure, just a quick statement. Remember guys that all the information presented today is for educational purposes. It is really important that you take your advice from your own professional. Thanks.
Especially when you're dealing with unit titles and cross leases, I would say. Yeah. Okay, thank you and see you next time.